right, welcome back to From A to Arbitration. Today we're going to be dealing with tenure and the bank of goodwill. To me, tenure is the single greatest argument we can ever make against any form of discipline management chooses to bring against us. Time in the service, time worked, is the greatest argument we can use, and we never use it. It's rare that I find a grievance when I'm going to arbitration where we talk a whole lot about tenure. But arbitrators will rely on tenure more than any single thing that they'll rely on. And we have to start doing a better job of bringing an argument forward about a carrier's tenure. We've got to. On the 8190, it talks about seniority date. Rarely ever will that be filled out. We've got to fill that out on the 8190, because as an advocate, when I get that 8190, I'm going to say, what are we dealing with? We dealing with a carrier with a couple of years, or we dealing with a carrier with 20 years? There's a huge difference when we go to arbitration between a carrier with a couple of years and a carrier with, 15, 20, 30 years. Arbitrators are very, very hesitant to discipline carriers with a lot of time. And we have got to use that to our benefit. I was in an arbitration the other day. It was an attendance arbitration. It was just a letter of warning, but, that's the first step to my removal is a letter of warning. So it was a letter of warning, and the carrier had 33 years. And I know I sounded like a broken record in there, but I kept talking about 33 years. This man has 33 years. Here's the first step to his removal. He's got 30. I bet I said it 20 times. And so in the arbitrator, when she rendered a decision, she says, management failed to recognize the grievance 33 years of service, and threw out the letter of warning. just like that. Failed to recognize the grievance 33 years of service. So we have got to do a better job of contending tenure. A lot of arbitrators call it a bank of goodwill. Matter of fact, in the Defenses to Discipline book that I use all the time, it's the old one. It's the white book with the red writing, Defenses to Discipline. It talks about tenure and bank of goodwill. It's on page 44. The title is Grievant has long prior service, good prior record, or both. And here's what the arbitrator said. It's in case number 3587. It says the grievant has served this employer for over 8 years. So 8 years to him was good enough, without any demonstrated disciplinary penalty. I have, in the past, referred to this as a bank of goodwill. In such instances of long, good service, it must be recognized that a single violation, even a serious one, may occur without an assumption that there has been the destruction of the trust necessary to the continued employment relationship. Indeed, years of good, faithful service have been many times been used and accepted as substantive evidence of lack of just cause for discharge. That is huge language that we can use. That last part. Indeed, years of good, faithful service have many times been used and accepted as substantive evidence of lack of just cause for discharge. So he's saying you didn't have just cause based solely off of a carrier's tenure. So we've got to do a better job of bringing that issue forward at the informal step A. My carriers, most of my carriers, I've got 27 years, and like I said when I first started this podcast, I'm in the middle of the pack in my station. I've got a carrier there that's been carrying mail longer than I've been alive, and I'm 52. You're going to have a hard time getting rid of that guy. If this carrier was caught throwing away mail, I'm going to say there's a pretty good shot he's come back to work. That's how strong tenure is. I've got another arbitration site, and it talks about the power of seniority. It's from arbitrator William Renfro, and it's the C number is 5138 A and B, because I believe it was dealing with emergency placement and a removal. 5138. And arbitrator Renfro is dealing with a case where a carrier was being followed on the route by a manager from another station, and this manager was badgering her the entire time. Follows her into a gas station. Finally, she's had more than she could take. And she assaults this manager. She assaults him, scratches his face up. They take pictures. And here's part of what Arbitrator Renfro stated. He said, Grievant has a 14-year exemplary work record. She has never been the subject of disciplinary action. Her supervisors speak of her as a good worker and one they would be glad to take back. It is quite obvious that this factor was not given sufficient weight by postal management in making the decision to remove. He goes on to state, it is the arbitrator's opinion that whether or not the grievance nails were long enough to inflict the alleged wound, a detail disputed in the testimony, or whether she deliberately poked the supervisor does not change the focus of the inquiry. Was discharge a reasonable penalty in light of all the attendant circumstances? It should be noted that the color photographs of Mosley, taken 30 minutes after the incident, do not picture more than 2 red marks on his cheek, nothing approaching a bleeding abrasion. While typically an offense of this type can justify discharge, the grievant's long years of service, her exemplary work record, and the Postal Service contributor responsibility all serve to justify a reduction in penalty to a 30-day disciplinary suspension. Then finally he states this, it is the conclusion of the arbitrator that the behavior of the grievant in this matter was a serious offense, not to be condoned, and calling for significant discipline. However, a full consideration of all the circumstances, including the magnitude of the assault, a measure of provocation, and the long and excellent work record of the grievant, compels the conclusion that the penalty of removal is excessive and not supported by just cause. The grievant is ordered reinstated without loss of seniority or other benefits and with back pay, less a 30-day disciplinary suspension and any earnings or unemployment compensation received since removal. That's how important tenure is. It can get a carrier out of just about anything. Now, I'm not condoning throwing away mail and assaulting anybody. I mean, we should never, those are no-nos. But if you have a carrier in your office that's in a jam, in a serious jam, and they've got some tenure, that should be the first argument we make. Here's Corey Walton with 27 years of service. Record is relatively discipline-free, and that would cause a hardship to him and his family if he's removed. He has worked at this company for 27 years. He has a bank of goodwill that he's been depositing into for 27 years, and the arbitrator were asking that he make a withdrawal on this one. Now, it may deplete his account entirely, but he's been putting into that bank of goodwill for 27 years. And so, lastly, I'm going to read from El Khoury and El Khoury, and this is kind of the arbitrator and advocate's Bible. It's how arbitration works. And on page 641, they talk about length of service with company. And they state this, long service with the company, particularly if unblemished, is a definite factor in the employee's favor when his discharge is reviewed through arbitration. Arbitrators have recognized that the loss of seniority may work great hardship on the employee and that it is not conducive to the improvement of relations between other workers and management. A lot of people recognize the importance of tenure and a bank of goodwill. We have got to do a better job of recognizing that ourselves. On that 8190, make sure we're putting that seniority date on there so the advocate can know how long this employee has been there. Make that your first contention. This carrier has this many years, a great work record, regardless of the charge, regardless of what's happened. Make that contention, because all arbitrators, will pay attention to tenure and that bank of goodwill. Will pay attention to tenure and that bank of goodwill. Okay? So, tenure, bank of goodwill. Let's start making contentions on that. Those are huge arguments for us, massive arguments for us. Any discipline that a carrier gets if they have tenure, make that argument. I don't care what the discipline is. Any discipline a carrier gets and they have tenure and a bank of goodwill, we make that contention at the informal step A. All right? That's one less argument that the formal A has to come up with. They're going to be busy enough when they get this thing. So Tenure, Bank of Goodwill. We're going to contend it, and hopefully this has helped y'all. And we will talk about stationary events and backing on the next episode, because we're going to have fun with that. Okay? Y'all have a fantastic rest of the day. Hope y'all are doing well out there, and I'll see you on the other side now. Take care. Bye-bye.